And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Malia, artist, linguist, English teacher, and Japanese specialist who has had divine coincidences with angels since 2019 that have turned her life around, and today we're going to talk about it. Malia, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, good evening from Portland.
Malia, you have also had an NDE, so can we start with that?
Yeah, I never got to the point where I crossed over or I fully lost consciousness, but I did get to the point where I was so delirious and having trouble with my brain that I wanted to cross over, and I did have episodes of seeing white light and fractals and grids and very strange patterns when I was having these episodes of being very ill.
Well, let's move to the day that your NDE happened and go from there.
Okay, well there was more than one. 2019, I'd actually been ill since 2017. I was sickened when I was working abroad in Japan. I don't know if it was something environmental. I don't know if it was postpartum hormones. I think it was just a combination of a lot of forces in my life that got me really sick. And then one thing that triggered me, I found my documents. These are medications that I was given in Japan. I translated the name. I was given clarithromycin, which is a pretty hard antibiotic, and in susceptible people, it can kind of trigger GABA receptor damage in the brain. And then another drug that they tried to give me was levofloxacin, which also can cause mitochondrial damage in vulnerable individuals. It's not going to be everybody, but in vulnerable people, it can cause mitochondrial damage, which affects GABA receptors in the brain. And then an interesting one I talked to a rheumatologist before is this one. It's called minocycline, and it can cause, she said it can cause lupus, and it causes microvessel damage in susceptible people. So I was exposed to all three of those while I was working abroad when I was in a vulnerable state. I was postpartum. I was really tired from a demanding job. And then after that, I really crashed. I was at my school, and then I was looking at the blinds, and then everything was just kind of swimming, like my vision, and my health really spiraled out of control after that. And then I was chronically sick after that for 2 years. And then we mentioned that my NDE was in 2019. I was just still dealing with lingering effects. I tried to do fruit fasting to clean my system or change the energy in my system. And then I went off the deep end. I also tried a different energy treatment at that time called NATE. It was supposed to help me with my allergies because I had lots of allergies, but it kind of backfired. And then I was just completely delirious, and I called the ambulance to take me to the hospital. And those were the times when I was seeing the light and seeing fractals and grids. And then I have read about Susanna Cahalan brain on fire, kind of autoimmune encephalopathy kind of situation, where at the time a test to check the brain status is drawing a clock, and then when I tried to draw the clock, the numbers kind of spiraled in, and they were kind of focused on one side instead of being a proper drawing. But at the hospital, they treated it like a psychosis, and they just kind of gave me medicine, and they locked me up for the night. And then after taking the medication, I just kind of blacked out. And then I remember slowly recovering for 2 weeks after that.
Were you spiritually transformed from that?
Not at that time. No, it was more like a trauma from that time.
Okay.
Because it was just very traumatic to be so ill, and then like try to explain that I'd had this, that it was a neurologic issue. But I did check in with very good neurologists locally, and they tried to test me for antibodies, but they couldn't find any in my blood.
So when did you start having these coincidences?
I guess fast forward from 2019, that would have been, well, I got really sick again, 2020, 2021. I guess I was working, my husband was trying to start a business in Japan, and I was working at Target, and then I started seeing the number 666 all the time with like transactions when I was checking people out at the register. And then even I have my internet sticker shop, and then people would order stickers and the transaction would come out at 666. And this was just before the corona started. And I remember there were some rumblings on the news that, oh, there's a new virus, like we think this is gonna turn into something that's gonna affect the whole world. And then I just got a real bad feeling in my stomach back then. But I mean, I was still like holding strong until the winter time, and then I got shingles really bad.
Well, seeing 666, most people, I think, at least in the Western world, would interpret that as something bad, like the number of the beast.
Right. But then, and then if you look up from an angel perspective, it's more like being stuck in a bad pattern. And then like when I was working at Target, like that's not my truth. Like my passion is Japanese, and my passion is using language and interpersonal interactions. And I did get some of that at the store, of course. It would be funny when like local Japanese people would come to I was working in the toy section, and I'd be like, oh, I can totally tell that person's Japanese, but I'm just a secret.
And do you think it's possible that you were Japanese in a past life, since you have such an interest in Japanese culture?
No, I think it's just because my family has like a friendship connection, like my grandfather, and it's also like trying to make amends almost, because like my grandfather, he was a mechanic in World War II, and he worked on airplanes. But then after the war, he became an artist, and then he made a lot of Japanese friends, and he traveled all around the world, Finland, Korea, Japan. He has art all over the place. And then like, yeah, just kind of resolving those issues. And then actually like the year he passed away of leukemia was the year I got sick and graduated. And I think maybe there was some grief for him passing while I went to Hiroshima, but then I was just learning about the trauma I felt the trauma of that place, and like the atomic bomb that had occurred there, and just thinking about that. And then I'd been in Japan the year before that, and I found out that my host sister, she doesn't even live in Hiroshima now, and her family is mostly in Nagoya, but she said her grandparents are from there, and they were actually affected by the bomb. So that's interesting. Before I even went to Hiroshima, I had that connection to Hiroshima.
Can you tell us about some of the other coincidences?
Like I had the one like psychosis, like I was seeing light, and I saw like a tunnel, like I wanted to push myself through it, but I couldn't go. I was like begging. I was like, I'm so sick. Like I can't live like this. Like I wanted to like pass through at that time, and that's not a good place to be. And then fast forward last year, I was working at a Japanese company, and I was really enjoying myself. But starting in the fall, again, my health started declining. And then eventually I got to the point where I was seeing light again, and I was bedbound. I couldn't walk. I couldn't drive. I couldn't talk. I had like the worst mental fatigue imaginable. And like working with my doctors, it's a combination of the mitochondrial damage, and it's not from any one source. It's just kind of like sensitive people accumulate it. And that's when I got really desperate, and I contacted Megan, because I'd seen a neurologist, my general internist, naturopaths, and nothing was helping. I was allergic to every treatment I tried, herbs, vitamins, whatever. Everything made me feel worse. So I talked to Megan a couple times.
I'm just letting everybody know, and she's referring to Megan. That's Megan Sforza, and she's also been a previous guest. So how did Megan help you?
Well, she is a medium, so she can connect, and it's not even just to deceased people. She can kind of connect to the energy. So I asked her, like, Megan, like, what's up with my body? Like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, I kind of feel something on your ovary. And I mean, they've said I had polycystic ovary syndrome. I had a grandmother pass of kind of like female reproductive cancer. And then she said, oh, I feel something on your lung too. And then she said, oh, like I can feel like your body's numb. Like I have a lot of neuropathy from whatever damage was done. And
Was she correct?
yeah, I was like, she doesn't know. And then I contacted her again. Like I was hoping for somebody to come through. Like I was really missing my grandmother and grandfather, but no, it was she said, oh, like they don't want to come through. And I mean, I can see it. My grandma's a cowboy. They're like tough Montana people. They weren't really into the spiritual stuff. Not like wearing it on their sleeve or anything. But I guess my college friend, he's Japanese. I guess he was kind of excited and he came through and he was like, oh, Malia, you're such a bookworm. Like, you're such a bookworm. And he said, like, don't give up. Like, you've been sick before and you never gave up before. Why are you trying to give up this time? But it was bad because my allergies and the whatever kind of autoimmune, like Lyme disease kind of situation I had going on chronically, it kind of like scarred my lungs so bad. Like I'd just be laying in bed gasping for breath, like allergic to everything. And I'd cry out and I'd be like, I can't do this anymore.
So your friend from Japan came through during your session with Megan?
Yeah, and she nailed it. She said, oh, like I see this guy, he's like in a car, and that's his last Facebook picture on his Facebook page is he was riding in our car. We were probably going somewhere, and then like I forgot, I didn't realize I even hung out with this guy. But when I go back to my Facebook, I can see like, oh yeah, like we really hung out with my husband and all of my college friends. Like we really hung out a lot, and the year was like 2009.
Is there any way to know from your Facebook page that he has already passed?
I don't know. I mean, I see my Japanese friends, like sometimes they chitter chatter to each other and they're like, oh, like if you're in the area, let's go visit his tomb, because that's very common to go visit your friend's gravesite, friends and family.
So that's cool.
That was back then, and like I didn't have much progress. Like that must have been like really early. That must have been like March or April that we talked about that, and then I was just sick all summer. Usually like what my doctors tell me, like it's kind of like a Lyme, like mold toxicity, like just weak organs, not getting rid of the toxins from just everyday environmental exposures very well. I think that's changed now, which is good, but so I thought I was going to get better in summer, and I thought to go to our lake cabin, and then no, like I was allergic to the trees and the pollen, and then like I had all this like numbness and neuropathy in my teeth, and my brain stuff was flaring really bad. I couldn't stop crying at that time, which was a downer because usually in summer I would come back to life and perk up. And then we got to this winter. We got to I'd say September. My husband left to go start the business, and I was just kind of alone with my elderly parents and my daughter for now. And then I was in a big panic, and then I had a friend approach me. She's a high school acquaintance, a good friend of my good friend who's working in Japan, but she's a stateside. She's seems like she's kind of a girl version of him. And she said, hey, I'm a Reiki master. You want to try Reiki? And I was like, oh, well, I don't have money. And then I don't know, I looked up a business in my local town. I saw there was a place called 333 Reiki, which is a really holy number, and it's kind of the antidote to 666. And then because I had no money, I saw YouTube. They have like an attunement online, and they show like the hand motions and where to touch, and they explain what it is. And so I did that. And then there's a channel called Divine White Light, and they have like different Reiki. They have like Reiki for heartbreak. They have Reiki for good luck. They have Reiki for miracles. And the first one I did was Reiki for miracles. It was my Hail Mary, Hare Krishna kind of moment. And then after that, like I had to go to the bathroom right away. And then I noticed I was drowsy. And then with my brain damage, I have a lot of trouble shutting down and getting drowsy. Like insomnia is a big problem. So that was a shift, and that was pretty immediate. The next week, I kept doing these. Like I kept doing the movements and the little attunements, and I'd look up like YouTube has ASMR videos of other people receiving Reiki. And then one night I was guided to do that, like one of the sessions, and then like within I got really hungry, which I had a poor appetite for a while, and then I ate a lot, but then I was throwing up all night, which I hadn't had that reflex since I got sick in 2017. So it's kind of like an immune system kind of waking up, but I take that as a good sign. Sometimes you have something called a healing crisis.
Can you tell us about some of the other divine coincidences that you had?
Oh yeah, well they're super fun. So like after that, like the numbers started changing. So instead of seeing 666 all the time, like it's kind of shifted to 1111, which is a big manifestation number, and 333, which is the holy number, 444, which is a really loving number. More recently, I've been seeing like 777, which is like the jackpot luck number, and 888, which is like a really high like ascension number. Oh, and then the other thing, like I'm just getting signs everywhere, like all kinds of things, mostly through license plates, like the numbers on the license plates, words on license plates, even vanity plates and stickers, which is funny because I sell stickers, but like other people's bumper stickers, I'll be like, oh, that's kind of like has to do with like what's going on. Like I really like, it's interesting. I've always loved rock and roll since I was in high school, and when I was really like the first time I ever got really sick and like my immune system was kind of really off balance was in Hiroshima, and I was reading my diary that I wrote, and I didn't really listen to Queen when I was in high school. I listened to more like Japanese rock and Nirvana, but I had a Queen quote from Bohemian Rhapsody, and I wrote like, does anybody know what we are living for? And I was like, I don't even know where that came from, because I don't, like, none of my friends at the time listened to Queen. I don't know how that ended up in my diary, but today I was driving through the town and I saw a truck and the license plate said Rhapsody. I laughed. I laughed at that.
What do you think was the catalyst that started all these coincidences?
I think it was the Reiki.
The Reiki.
Yeah. And then I don't know, I think maybe they started even like when I talked to Megan last winter, because after our first meeting, my grandma's painting fell off the wall. And I know that she kind of like always wondered like about my husband, if we were gonna be okay, and yeah, we're gonna be okay. But it's funny that and then also we had a really bad leak in our ceiling, and I was looking up like what that means, and like it can mean OCD, and there is an element to OCD with the brain damage I've had, and that was part of the illness, was being a little bit OCD about things. But then it can also be like a satanic force invasion, like a sign of that. It's just scary, but I mean, if we seek the light and use the light and try to dwell in that, then we can vanquish anything. I think it's funny, the company I was working with last year, I should have got a hint. The company I worked is at Ushio, and It's a light. Their product is light bulbs. So I should have known, like, oh, I need some more light in my life. Like, even working for them.
Now, didn't you start getting signs through music on the radio?
Yeah, well, yeah, and like it's not even just. It's like I used to just I'd scroll my phone, I'd see bad news, bad news, bad news, but now it's like everything that pops up is health advice, which kind of pertains to my situation, like things to eat, supplements that might help, those kind of things. If I'm on YouTube, I'm looking at music, it'll be bands I've never heard of, but then I'll listen to the music and I'll be like, and I'll feel like, oh, that's really comforting. Like that was a really nice thing to hear today. Or it might be something that kind of looks like my experience, and then like even if it's traumatic, it's kind of framed in kind of a comedic way, and then I can laugh at it, and it's like, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to move on. It's like I don't have to like be sad about being locked up in the ER in 2019. Like that's behind me now. And now that I can drive and explore the town, and I'm back in a more normal frame of mind, I drive to Portland instead of driving into the ER parking lot. Like I'm driving to the Japanese garden, or I'm driving to a job interview. And it's just really empowering and makes me feel a lot better.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there are no coincidences?
Now I do. And then, yeah, even as a child, like I used to really like to write fiction, and I do RPG online, and I'd kind of role play and masquerade as my characters in chat rooms. And then an interesting coincidence, like as an adolescent, I was in middle school. I was pretending to be one of my characters, and then I met somebody and I thought they were real, but then I found out they were also masquerading as a character. We were masquerading as characters, then we found out we're both middle school girls. We're the same age.
Maybe it
So
could be.
I've had these coincidences all my life.
Probably
Maybe
somebody.
they're not coincidences. I guess it's meant to happen.
Probably somebody would philosophize that we're all masquerading as characters.
Well, and then a movie that was really comforting to me when I was sick was the movie V for Vendetta.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, and it's set in 2020, which is when all this chaos went down and fear. The world is scared of everything, and like, and then the woman is reborn. She like the key to releasing herself from fear is just to release that fear of death and move on from the past. And that's kind of what happened to me. And she needed a secret masked a masked being to like let her know. And then I like that quote that ideas are indestructible. Oh, it's ideas are bulletproof. Which there's a line of coffee like MCT oil and stuff for people that have mold illness or biotoxin disease. It's called bulletproof coffee. That's kind of interesting too. If there's anybody out there who has like biotoxin disease, Lyme disease, they call it chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I just want them to have hope, and they can reach out to me. If anybody wants to talk about Japan or Japanese music or Japanese language, I'm up for that too.
I had a guest once that she had an NDE from mold exposure.
Yeah, and I don't know what I was exposed to in Shizuoka, but it was nasty. I think it was something in the water because my like I started to be kind of kidney failure, and the person that was sharing the house with me was in kidney failure, and they kind of had a rash of teachers that would come and go. They'd come in normal, and then they'd get there and they'd live in the environment, and then they'd leave with bad anxiety. Like I don't know what I was exposed to, but I have pictures of the place. There's all these tears in the screens, and all this mold around the window frames. And the first bath I took there, my thyroid just started burning.
Yeah, it could have been some type of environmental toxin.
And I don't know, like everybody's still alive. I follow them, and like even though it was a rough situation, I really value it. It was like a Buddhist preschool, and it was just really moving to see that way of life and to see how disciplined the students were. It was like I wouldn't change it for anything. Like it was a beautiful experience in spite of everything.
Well, what's the best way to reach out to you?
You can get me at my shop, etsy.com/MAUT, like tiger, IO.
So on Etsy, you can actually send messages back and forth and chat with
You
people?
might have to register for an account. I'm on Instagram too.
What is your Instagram handle?
Pixie Patron. Maybe I can. I'm a teacher and I have a little paper. I can spell it out.
Pixie Patron.
Yeah, because I love fairies, and my first love before Japanese was French language, and I really liked Victor Hugo and Hunchback of Notre Dame.
All right, that's Pixie, Pixi Patron, Patrin, all one word.
Yeah, that's my personal Instagram. It's really goofy. It's all over the place.
I had a guest one time who had a near-death experience after crashing his mountain bike. And I think after his experience, when he regained consciousness, he was laying down in the woods and saw fairies.
That would be nice. Well, and I love, I was a ballet dancer growing up, and we did fairy dances, and I had a dance teacher, and he'd be like, "Okay, you're a fairy in the woods," and then me and my close my bestie from high school, he lives in Japan now. We'd always talk about fairies in the woods, and I'd draw him fairies. He's got my pictures all over his apartment.
All right, Malia, well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
It's just like, hang on to the hope. Yeah, if I helped anybody today, then like this was worth doing and worth talking about. Like you're not alone. Like, I guess what I felt like, even though like I thought, oh, like my friend who passed on is an angel, but I've noticed, like, since things started shifting for me, like I see the angelic side of people who are still alive, and like the way people treat me in public is a lot different. And I think we all have angel bodies, we just don't recognize it. So my husband's Korean, and there's a coffee shop called Angel in Us Coffee in Korea, and I think all of us have a little angel inside of us if we can just tap into it.
Malia, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.